Hello everybody. Welcome to week 5 of the Keeping It Moving journey. It's raining today, and out here I've picked some very hopefully relaxing garden music. I love the flutes, I love the wind chimes and the birds, and I can hear some of that around me right now. So I hope it passes on to you in the making of this video and the story. I'm going to adjust a little bit to make sure that you can hear my voice with the camera balanced the way it is. There we go. This week was a harder week for me. The activity and exercise for emotional and mental health is called Jumping for Joy, and it has been months since I've been able to jump without overloading my spine and causing intense pain and sometimes inflammation through my body that lasts for weeks. And it's been very sobering and very can be very scary at times and very limiting. So how do we go about this week when our bodies and our souls are utterly ill-equipped to exercise and practice what we truly need? Well, Twyla has some very good ideas from her era in terms of the soul and in terms of emotions, and I really felt as I meditated on the stories that we will make a longer video this week, and that this video is actually really not for me. I relate to aspects and I understand, but I think this chapter, more than any of the others, addresses men and women in her own age demographic. She's 78 years old, and there are her stories and inspirations and trials that she shares are very much for, I don't like to say elderly. I feel like we don't have the words in our English language to honor and appreciate the elderly. When we say that, it has a negative connotation. So I'd like to say it in the grandma, grandpa, like when we're on the islands or down in Africa, papa, mama, uncle, auntie. The terms of endearment that honor the elderly in our lives, and a respect for them and an appreciation for them. So that's my introduction, and this week is going to be a little longer. There's some stories in here. If you know Donald O'Connor and Buster Keaton, I think you'll enjoy this week, and I hope you find both rest and encouragement. Kicking into high gear. A small poke in the ribs from a loved one may help set the tone for the day once eyes are open. But if we are to aim higher than "I'm alive," a jolt with more serious voltage might be required. She opens with embracing her body, assessing, where am I today? Am I ready to jump up and get going, or am I wanting to dive into the covers? Am I in pain? Am I sore? Am I tired? And she says, optimism is a choice, and it's yours to make. You want a victory lap kind of outcome to your day, you've got to work for it. Extreme measures may be called for. One of the ways that many of us artists, dancers, and more people, as music becomes a more powerful substance in our lives, go to energize us, to calm us, to redirect us, is through music. And music plays a key theme in the exercises for this week. So as I share these stories, think of what kind of music makes you happy. What kind of music gives you energy to jump for joy? What kind of music helps you grieve and release stress? Before we can jump for joy, we have to often let our bodies grieve. To grieve the things that they lost and they can no longer do. so that when we look for a way to jump, it fits. It fits our pledge. And that's been my journey this week in reading her story and relating to these, is how can I jump? Maybe I have some grieving to do first before I can find a way to jump for joy. In working with her dancers, Twyla says this: I look for optimism when I select my dancers. All successful dancers I know realize that they will not win the battle against age, but this does not stop them from working hell for leather now. Full commitment. I strongly relate to this in past years of life, going for everything, staying very optimistic as much as possible, having the meltdowns, moving through them, and re-engaging with joy and positivity. A lot of that is my personality type. I have a strength in that area, but a lot of it comes from a hard work and practice that when we dance and we perform, we give our all and our whole being to that expression, to tell that story. We're giving it every single time, and needing the adaptability and the flexibility, both mentally and physically, to take on the art that we're attempting to create. As you move, only allow positive images. What are positive images in your life? What are the things that make you feel confident and strong, that return to joy? It's very important to only allow positive images to help you get moving. Believe in yourself and your purpose. Keep it going. Talk to the body with kind words, at least as encouraging as you would to support your best friend. Learn to become your own cheerleader. The antithesis to this is that with age and sickness and loss, we adopt what's called learned helplessness. You may have heard this before. It was identified specifically as a result of aging by the University of Pennsylvania. This shows up when we are conditioned to expect pain or discomfort, when we make a peremptory retreat to avoid those nasty outcomes. So maybe you don't struggle to be optimistic, but maybe you have some learned helplessness also. What in your life is holding you back, that you avoid and that you run from, that you're scared to do now, like jump? The way to boost your mood for real in a sustained way is to line up your actions with your values. Practice optimism. And to those who are struggling with this, she asks, could we have forgotten our pledge? If you don't remember the pledge, go back to week 2. Revisit that pledge in the discussion of what a pledge is in our lives, because as optimism becomes more difficult with age, we can lose sight of the pledge that keeps us going. Could we have forgotten? Even for the faithful optimists, the keep-it movers, the ones who know how to jump and bounce back, there will be whining days. There will be kvetching. That's your cue to get funny. Go to laughter. Implosion releases huge energy. I love that word, kvetching. It's complaining. Allowing ourselves to become worn down and then wearing other people down with the complaints. This isn't the same as sharing a burden. This isn't the same as expressing pain and need and grief. This is the bitterness and resentful, angry complaining of what we can't have and what we can't get. I've had those moments, and often they're moments for me. It's not a lifetime yet. Part of my younger body says, you'll make it, even though it feels like I can't. But for those who are truly, have spent many more years, are you stuck in complaining? Twyla says she was having a terrible day, and she went out to dinner once and couldn't get seated at the table. She was just frustrated. She was kvetching and kvetching, swearing about how terrible it was. They sat down to dinner, and her friend looked across the table at her and said, "You've become timid. I don't like to see you weak and meek," she says. And that was all it took. A sudden flip to see what I looked like from the other side of the table. I had succumbed to a bout of learned helplessness. Where was my pledge? Geez Louise, she was right. I'd been on a negativity bender. So how do we get out of this? Who can we look to for inspiration? One of my favorite movies is Singing in the Rain with Donald O'Connor, and Twyla got to work with Donald O'Connor when they were filming Ragtime, and he was in the numbers. This was in the 1980s, and so she shares this story, but also more about his life and what he went through, and I want to read it to you. As I read, and you hear there's two stories, two people coming up, here's what I want you to ask yourself. In the complaining, in the lack of movement, in the frustration, is this something I can change? In 1981, when I was working with legendary actor, song and dance man Donald O'Connor in London during the shoot for the film of Ragtime, he was featured in a number with 20 young ladies. It was always O'Connor at the age of 56, following health issues with a corset to support his weight, and he was on his feet first. Unlike the girls, he never marked a moment in a single rehearsal. Week 3, we talked about marking, copying out, taking our bodies and minds through the steps, but in a smaller way, in order to learn it. Well, not O'Connor. He simply did not let down. Fortitude in spades. He had grown up in vaudeville and had a trooper's attitude. Nothing would stop him. He was from the Buster Keaton School of Hard Knocks, and his attitude was that you don't get out of a show unless you die. This man was bursting with optimism. Like they say, dying is easy, comedy is hard. O'Connor understood that to produce positive feelings, you gotta work. He was the guy who, after filming Hollywood's most demanding solos in half a day, make 'em laugh for Singing in the Rain. Remember, he's flipping over the couches, he's running up walls. It took him 3 days in bed to recover, and when he returned to work, he was told that the film had fogged and they had to do it all over again. But you know, he didn't complain. He went back to work. So what are you complaining about? What is the change you'd like to see happen? Is it something you can fix? Well, then fix it. Remember, she says, it was you, my friend. She reminds herself, it was you who made this choice. So when you find yourself grousing, my tough love advice, pull up your socks. Learn to say no to negativity, even to negative people in your life. Doesn't mean you cannot be there for a friend who's still struggling to find their own optimism, but it does mean that you need to find someone in your life that you can create chemistry with, that you can get back into comedy with and laugh with. Hey, do you like my jokes? I've personally so blessed to have found a friend recently where we can share that comedy and that humor. I ask, I was like, I love making people laugh. Do I make you laugh? Good. And it brightens my day if I can make somebody laugh. Another story. After a career of immense productivity as a sculptor and painter of prodigious gifts, Henri Matisse found himself essentially bedridden at the age of 72. First diagnosed with abdominal cancer in 1941, he lived until 1954 with abdominal cancer, creating many works in his last years. Recalling the assemblages he made during his Fauve period half a century earlier, Matisse found new possibilities for working by using his scissors. Laying back in bed with a 12-foot bamboo cane strapped to his wrist, he was able to paste huge swaths of colored paper on his walls to create works of extraordinary sophistication and joy. His purpose remained strong, and when he died, taped to his wall, a maquette for a stained glass window that would be executed 2 years later. Fight, fight, fight. Keep chipping at the status quo bias. Keep chipping at the funk. Fight until you can make change, not stasis, the constant. Ultimately, your values, your faith, your beliefs most held dearly are what will support your finale. Visualize. Remember your pledge. Your values, faith, and beliefs, most dearly held, are what will support your finale. In 1908, when he was just beginning work as an artist, Matisse wrote, "My destination is always the same, but I work out different routes to get there." In a life filled with many difficulties, cancer, war, painful divorce, Matisse's work never abandoned his pledge to find joy in the world around him. What I dream of is an art of balance, purity, and serenity, devoid of troubling or depressing subject matter. In late photographs by Henri Matisse, Matisse holds a living dove in his left hand and with his right sketches the bird as an exuberant celebration of life. There are always flowers for those who want to see them. What an incredible couple of men. And there's so many other men and women like them who are remembered for what they fought through. So for you, beloved elderly ones, to my aunties and uncles, to the grandparents of my children, keep fighting. Keep fighting for us. You have so much left to give. And I need to be reminded that I still have something to give. That illness, the kinds of illnesses that most people won't face until they are 70 or 80, the loss of children, the death of children, the inability to have more, not being able to jump. Your fight helps us remember that we have something to give to the world and to others when things get hard. Find a way to jump.